Hello, I'm Todd Phillips, the editor of Canadian Auto Dealer. I'm here today with Vince Poloniato. He's the president of Solutions in Motion, and it's a company that makes the Trackem and the WearSafe platforms to help with vehicle tracking. Vince, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an interesting development. You've created a technology and a platform that really helps track vehicles at a time when dealerships are really trying to increase and change their whole test drive procedure. So I know you've been having and beta testing the product with dealers and introducing it. So tell us a bit about the product and why it's a good fit for car dealers.
With the new rules that are applying, mostly around social distancing and the changes in our lifestyle based on this COVID pandemic, I think it's critical that the essential part of the sale be maintained, and that the dealers have the ability to allow clients in such an important buying decision to feel, see, smell, taste. The potential would be even to share that that experience and take a vehicle home and that kind of stuff without posing discomfort or liability of any kind. So I don't have to have a rep in the car. I don't have to have a rep follow them around. I can keep both parties safe. So I'm going to keep my staff safe. And at the same time, I'm going to allow a client a true test drive experience. And ultimately, the more we've looked at this, the more we've said, we can make test drives better, let alone take this negative and make it into a positive.
So tell us a bit about the technology then. So, I mean, how it applies to a vehicle and even the back end. I know there's an app that helps the salespeople remotely, track vehicle usage, that sort of stuff. Tell us a bit about the nuts and bolts of how it might work in terms of a dealer situation.
Sure. So for the most part, we're recommending a magnetic tracker for simplicity purposes. It can be installed in less than a minute per se. Thrown in a back seat, thrown in the trunk. It has a magnet on it that can just be clamped to any car, any steel surface that's there. The way our system works is what we call real-time tracking, and it just starts updating. So it'll notify, the rep that the car has left the dealership. And then every minute or 2 minutes, depending on the interval they choose, it will upload the information, including sort of speed, location, stops, all that kind of stuff. Through this beta program, we've discovered, for example, dealers are also curious as to, where the vehicle stopped and how long it stopped. For purposes of liability, if I don't have a rep with that car, what is that car doing, and where's it being? So, in the meantime, somebody can sit back and just simply use their handset and watch that thing drive around in real time, including even some driving behaviors, including stops, including all that kind of stuff, and not have to use their time to travel around behind them. They'll be notified again when the car is returned to the dealership or returned to that client's driveway, and able to engage with this social distancing practices, but allowing the driver to experience the vehicle with comfort and safety in both parties. And I think that essentially by just planting that in the back of the car, they immediately have on their handset, in what we call an at-a-glance perspective, the ability to monitor that thing in real time. Nobody has to interact or do anything more than that. Just place it, look at your handset, and watch it go, and we can see exactly where that car goes. And every 2 minutes or 1 minute, it'll upload the interval. So in the worst case scenario, we're sort of 60 seconds behind the car, but we're right with the car, and we literally see a popcorn trail form on our mobile phone.
Well, the other thing it does, as you mentioned, it tracks things like speed and driving habits or patterns, I suppose. So that information, certainly if you alert the consumer, look, I'm going to give you this test car for a test drive. You can take it home for a day or overnight or for the weekend, whatever the interval you feel comfortable with. But by the way, we have this tracking device in there, and we're going to be monitoring stuff. But maybe that acts as a deterrent, or the fear that they're going to take the car and just go kind of hog wild with over the weekend. So do you encourage dealers to let them know, hey, I'm tracking you? Does that help with moderating or curbing behavior? I know the insurance companies are putting these little devices in the vehicles to help sort of control or, moderate behavior. Do you find that's helpful?
Yes, 100%. And I can speak, after 15 years of GPS tracking and sort of migrating from the business space to the consumer space, there's not a single person that we would ever sort of suggestively say you should put GPS tracking in that vehicle and not inform the client. Technically, the asset itself, and here in Canada, they do not have to, because they're just simply monitoring their asset. They're not tracking that individual. On the same token, to modify behavior and see to it that they're not, at great risk by providing this person an unmonitored test drive, and to actually allow that client to know that they're being monitored will immediately modify behavior. And we have examples of that, through the course of 15 years of doing GPS. The first thing we encourage any of our historical business clients is let your employees know, and 4 hours fall off their logbook. It's just one of those scenarios that immediately behaviors change. And it's no different than sort of having that virtual test drive now. They're thinking that a rep is sitting beside them in the car, except they're not experiencing any of the awkward social distancing pieces.
It's interesting because social distancing, as you say, may have been the driver to sort of change this technology. But I do know when I talk to automotive journalists who review cars all the time, they say you can't really get to know a car in an hour, a couple hours, even in a day. Sometimes they say they spend the better part of a week with it, and then you figure out, is there a spot for my dry cleaning? What's it like backing up? What's it like parking? So the idea that these 15-minute test drives are adequate is sort of just a process, whereas dealers might find they have more success if they're comfortable allowing for more extended test drives to allow a consumer to enjoy it for a weekend, let the family see it, as you mentioned before, see what it looks like in your driveway, that sort of stuff. Now it's a shift in the model, but I think these technology tools may help with at least the comfort of that fear that something bad is going to happen to the vehicle, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like I say, the more we've been talking about this, more we've been debating and talking to dealers, essentially this test drive experience can be better and have a greater conversion tool, is what we're hearing from feedback, if we really allow them to experience what we're selling within that vehicle. If they're after trunk space, we want them to take it to a grocery store. If they're after a family a vehicle with 7 seats, we want them to take it home, put the kids in the back seat, and go for a drive. I think that it's safe to say ratios will improve, sales will improve. And as you just spoke about, that ability to see, smell, taste a car, takes that emotional level slightly higher, I think, than, this sort of rush test drive that sort of we historically experienced, that the guy's sitting waiting for me to bring it back. We do think that the potential would be that this whole experience changes, in a sense that, depending on mileage, which is also very monitorable, we could drop it with them for the weekend, enjoy it for the weekend, take it to the grocery store, take the kids to the park. And we would suggest that ratios will go up. They should be able to, in turn, pose more attraction to that vehicle. They're taking it out for a test drive for a reason, and we believe that the majority of that reason is to prove themselves they're making the right decision. And by including family members and other emotional responses, they get reinforcement on that decision.
Well, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves in terms of whether this is one of the long-term changes of this pandemic, is that dealers had to accommodate things like physically finding ways to bring their vehicles to customers, to let them test drive it remotely, and if you will, change up the business model of the showroom and the test drive being the focus. So maybe these tools will be a part of that changing of the guard, changing the customer experience. So thanks for sharing your technology and your story with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Signing off.